You're listening to Wise Women with Daisy Khan, where faith rolls up its sleeves as a force for good and where women define the future with wisdom and wonder. I'm Daisy Khan, author, speaker, and a Muslim woman who spent her life wrestling with a messy, miraculous collision of faith and real life. And kindly subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Welcome to Wise Women with Daisy Khan. This is my episode on books that build bridges and illuminate our understanding. Today, my guest is Samina Ali. She's the author of Pieces You'll Never Get Back, which teaches us how brokenness can become sacred ground. Samina Ali is an award-winning author. She wrote a book many years ago called Madras on Rainy Days. She's an influential activist for Muslim women's rights, popular public speaker, curator of an exhibition on Muslim women's art and voices. She has written on for Daily Beast, New York Times, San Francisco Chronicle, Child Magazine, and many others. Her TED Talk, What Does My Headscarf Mean to You?, has been viewed by more than 8 million people. So, today, let's get started. I welcome you, my friend, Samina Ali.
Thank you so much for having me, Daisy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, Samina, I have known you for years, and yet I knew nothing about what you endured in your personal life until I read this latest book. I'm holding it up because I want everybody to see. Pieces You'll Never Get Back. This is an amazing memoir about your unlikely survival after the birth of your son. And it took you 7-year journey of recovery. And you had all kinds of thoughts surrounding death, afterlife, resurrection. So I want to start with the very first question, which is childbirth is one of the greatest joys for a woman. So I want to ask you, what went wrong?
Daisy, I think starting there is so important for people to all understand what happened. So what I had is called preeclampsia. And preeclampsia, although we don't hear about it very often, it is the number one pregnancy complication. And in the U.S., believe it or not, the U.S. is the only developed nation where maternal mortality and maternal morbidity are on the rise. And for many of those women, preeclampsia is the issue. For me, what had happened is I was 29 years old when I got pregnant with my son. I was happily married. And even though I was a patient at one of the best hospitals in the nation, I fell through the cracks. And what it did is, because the preeclampsia was not diagnosed ever, despite me going in over and over and over, repeatedly going in and asking the doctors. The symptoms I was having were, kind of vague. So the final trimester, I was having headaches. I was having vision issues where I was seeing, little specks in my vision. You hear about how often women have to run to the bathroom. So turns out that when I went in to deliver my son, all of these symptoms started to escalate beyond, what I can even explain to you. I was having such severe pain in my chest and in my head that I was experiencing more pain up here than I was down there. And I kept asking the OB. He ignored the head pain. I kept saying, I'm seeing double. Now I'm seeing triple. Now I'm seeing quadruple. Kept ignoring me.
So you were being gaslighted during your health crisis?
Yes, he was saying I was being hysterical, that I didn't, that women have been giving birth and I'm just, complaining and I need to stop complaining. And 20 minutes after I delivered my son, I had a grand mal seizure, which is the worst seizure you can have. And it cut off oxygen to my brain for 30 seconds. That point, they were like, oh, she's been complaining. Maybe we should check out what's going on. It turns out that the chest pain that I was given Alka-Seltzer for was a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
The head pain that I was complaining about were multiple strokes that I was having throughout my head. fell into a coma. And at that point, I was wheeled down into the neuro ICU. I was intubated. I was put on, support and life support. And my parents and my husband were told, if she's lucky, she'll just die. Because if
That's
she,
when you were brain dead?
yep.
No. Hmm.
At that point, they said if she's going to be a vegetable, and one of you is going to, either my parents or my husband at the time were going to have to decide, my end of life, make my end of life decisions, basically.
Yeah. So did you go into a coma?
I was in a coma for 5 days.
If you're so close to death's door, what was it like for you to be between life and death? Or did you even know what was going on during the coma?
People wonder, when a person is in a coma, should we speak to the person? Can the person hear me? Can the person feel me touching touching you? You can't. You're pretty much far gone. I couldn't hear anyone around me. I couldn't feel anyone touching me. I was in a coma. But the one thing that I do remember, so both of my parents were there, and my mom says that the only time my mom left the hospital was when she went home to pray Salat. And she said one time when she went home to pray, she was, in sajda, she was, with her head bowed to the ground, and she was begging God, don't take my daughter from me. And she said that she felt this immense peace overcome her body. Like she just rose from sajda, and she was like, wow, I feel such peace that I know nothing is going to happen to her.
Hmm.
So when she came into the neuro ICU next to visit me, she actually whispered that into my ear. And I remember that. That's the one thing that I do have a memory of from those 5 days I was in a coma, is my mom whispering to me, don't listen to the doctors. You're not going to die. Nothing is going to happen to you. Keep your faith in Allah. Keep your faith in God.
Something had to die for you to renew to something else. It was like you had to usher in your son's life, but it required you to give a part of yours, because a part of your life is no longer there. You're not the same old self, right?
No, obviously not. I emerged from the coma and I had no memory of my husband. I had no memory that I'd given birth. I had no memory of my son. I felt no connection to my son. I lost much of my English language because English is my second language. Urdu is my first language. So I was still fluent in Urdu, but I had severe aphasia in English. So I wasn't able to say or speak exactly what I meant. Different words would come out. I was going blind in my right eye. I had no short-term memory. I had severe amnesia. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on in terms of all of the different faculties that I'd lost.
You talk about your body betraying you, and you portray your body as this shattered porcelain, yeah? Your doctor said to you that your brain is like a jigsaw puzzle and everything is strewn. Like, what does it actually mean to lose your memory? Like, you don't remember anything about your prior life?
No, I remembered. So it really is in terms of the damage, the extent of the damage to the brain. The neurologist said that it's, to think of my brain like a scattered jigsaw puzzle is because so many different neurons had been killed. When neurons in the brain die, they don't come back. They're dead. They're dead. And so when a person recovers from brain damage, they're not actually recovering. It's not like the flu. There's no linear process. In order to regain the faculties that you've lost from stroke and brain damage, is you have to create new neural pathways. So the process of creating new neural pathways means you've got to relearn, not remember, relearn to speak, relearn to walk, relearn to do the basic, things that we all take for granted in life. And that relearning process is what rewires the brain. So when I rewired my brain, I was re-engineering myself down to my very core and becoming entirely new again. Along with my newborn, might I add. We were kind of on the same
Exactly. I was
journey.
just going to say,
Yeah.
what was it like with a newborn that you didn't remember delivering? You know,
Yeah.
like, did you feel like part of you was alien to you? Like, what did it feel like?
Absolutely. It felt to me, as you said, like my body had betrayed me. I
Mm.
kept thinking women have babies all the time. Why did my body, have to be so dramatic? Why did I have to go to such extremes? But with my son, it was an interesting, you know, cycle with him because in the beginning, I didn't remember him. I didn't even remember delivering him. So when they brought him to me for the very first time, hoping that it would jog some memories, I had no memory of him. I didn't feel any connection or bond with him. And in fact, when I eventually was sent home, so my mom stayed with me, and I remember, we often think that, as soon as a woman has a baby, she's this maternal, force and she can, she'll die for her baby or she'll do this,
Sure.
and that. And what I realize is, just how false that is because when she was taking care of him and I needed her, he was sleeping
Mm.
all the time. I was sleeping. He needed help to, people were feeding him, people were feeding me, people were helping him, people were helping me. And so I could identify that he and I were on a similar path. And it made me very angry. And, I
Mm.
was in survival mode. And so I kept thinking, I need to survive and they need to help me to survive. And he felt like competition.
Yeah. And what did this poor husband of yours do?
So my son, he was born severely malnourished and he ended up in the NIC ICU
Mm.
while I was in the neuro ICU. So my poor husband was going from one ICU to the next, and they actually gave him my recovery room on the delivery ward and said, stay here, sleep here, don't leave the hospital because he was going from one floor to the next floor and he didn't, no one knew what was going to happen.
Oh, wow. Rumi has this beautiful poem, The Wound is Where the Light Enters You. So, what light has entered you through your wounds? I mean, something must have changed.
Oh my God. I feel like I don't think anyone can go through what I did. I mean, even my neurologist says in my 25 years of experience, I've never had anyone go have as much brain trauma as you, as much trauma to the body as you, and come back.
Mm.
And not only did I come back, but, he said I came back without any sort of visual impairments. Like, you can't, Daisy, I've known you for years. And until this book, you didn't realize.
In fact, when I first came to your book reading, I think I said that to you. How did I not know this?
And, you didn't know it because I didn't talk to people about it.
Mm. Was it
After,
because of taboo? What was it? Was it?
yes, people are so scared
Ah,
to
okay.
talk
Let's talk
about,
about that. Let's talk
yeah,
about the taboo
let's talk
part of
about
this.
the taboo. Agreed. People,
What will people say?
oh my God. Oh, well, I had this extreme trauma happen to me, and I would just start talking about going through what I did. People would literally stop me. There was one time I was at a dinner, and a man at the dinner table pounded on the dinner table and said, you have to stop. This is not appropriate dinner conversation. And I was thinking, and the host was the one who actually asked me to explain what had happened because the host was amazed that I had written my first novel,
Mm.
Madras on Rainy Days, to help me to recover from the brain damage. And so he was the one saying, oh my God, this is a miraculous story, share it.
Yeah.
The taboo, Daisy, is people don't want to talk about illness. They don't want to talk about weakness. They don't want to talk about death. They don't want to talk about aging. They don't want to talk about anything that makes us vulnerable or frail. I got the message, Daisy. I stopped talking about it. I acted like everything's normal. I'm fine. Even though this was the most important, the most significant thing I'd ever been through in my life, I censored myself. And
Mm.
to be honest, at that age, when you're 30 years old, 31 years old, it's people don't have this kind of experience, right? So I did feel isolated and alone, and I didn't really have anyone I could turn to. And
What role did your faith play in this? What did it become, your armor, your shield? What was it that there must have been something that you retreated to?
I think in the recovery process, I'll be honest, at first, when I was dealing with all of my brain damage and dealing with feeling like my body had become foreign to me, I say in the book, the thing that my neurologist feared I would never get back are the higher order functions of the brains. So the functions that help us to think, to comprehend, to imagine, to project ourselves into the future, everything that we need to write a book. So they said I would never write again.
Right.
I was very angry with God. I
Mm.
was
Ah, okay.
very
So
angry.
you went through that stage of why me?
Yeah, I
Mm.
was so angry and I kept thinking, you know, is this personal? Did I do something? Is this a punishment? All of those questions that we ask ourselves in our dark moments.
Mm.
And for me, I had been finishing my novel when I was pregnant, and then to be told I'd never write again. And again, I'm 29, 30 years old, and it felt to me like I thought I was starting my life, and then I
Mm.
was being suddenly told my life ended. So
Mm.
God was, I'm not a person who can stop believing in God. It would
Mm.
be easier to say, oh, I just stopped believing in God. It would be so much easier because it's easier to say God doesn't exist than to know that God exists and then
And
to
not
be
deny
so
that.
angry
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
be so upset and angry and full of rage
Mm.
and to live as though God has turned away and is punishing.
Mm.
So it was a very, very dark period.
I remember reading in the book that your doctor called you the miracle girl. So, so, so did you see yourself as this having this miraculous recovery?
I did not see myself as the miracle girl. My neurologist labeled me miracle girl. They did not expect me to emerge from the coma, but I emerged from the coma. They did
Mm.
not expect my organs to come back and start functioning again, and they started functioning again. They did not expect my brain to suddenly respond and stop swelling. It suddenly responded and stopped swelling. So everything that they anticipated, everything that their textbooks told them would not happen, started happening.
You had a lot of irreversible loss, but there is something that you gained, and there is a purpose for you in this life. You were spared, or you were sent. You were, you have to live for something else. So, did you discover afterwards that there is something more meaningful to your life?
You can't go through my experience and come back and not know that something bigger exists.
Mm.
Whether we say Allah or God or whether we call it the universe, and this is an example, Daisy. So when I was told that I would never write again, for some reason, I just fixated on it. I have no idea why. I was just so fixated. And I remember being like, I'm going to prove these doctors wrong. I'm going to write again. There was
Yeah.
absolutely no reason for me to fixate on writing a book when I am that severely brain damaged. I can't even get myself to the bathroom, but I'm fixated on writing a book.
Mm.
So the reason I think now in looking back in hindsight that I was fixated on writing a book is because I truly believe that that was what God wanted me to do in order to heal. So if I didn't write a book, I wouldn't be constantly pushing those neural pathways to reform and reconnect. And it was
Mm.
because I pushed them to reform and reconnect day after day, week after week, month after month, and then year after year, that I think I was able to get all of the functions back in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise if I had just given up. So
Yeah.
that impulse, that drive, I think that is God speaking to us when we feel insight, when we have intuition, when
Mm-hmm.
we feel that impulse sparking our actions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's God. I think that's God coming in
Yeah.
and helping us to see which direction we have to take.
And God's way of also prodding you that, hey, I gave you a talent. When are you going to hone that talent and use that talent for some public good? I mean, for you, active writing was not just, about mourning, but really reclaiming the agency over this fractured self that you had. And you put that whole self together through that writing.
Absolutely. And what I love about talking to you, Daisy, is that when I've talked to other reporters about the book, everyone really focuses on the medical aspect of the book
Mm-hmm.
and my recovery, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But the true message of the book is exactly what you're saying. It's not about the recovery. All of us face things, right? Whether you're dealing with cancer, whether you're dealing with losing a child or losing a parent or a loved one, whatever, autoimmune disorder we might be, we all face something. And the theme, the question that I have in the book is, what do we turn to?
Exactly. What do you do with this suffering or these trials? Do you take these trials and turn them into blessings, or do you take these trials and turn them into tribulations? That's a choice that we make.
Exactly. And why do we think that God only gives us good things? Why do we think that when we are suffering, that God is punishing us?
Actually, I don't know a single spiritual tradition that does not talk about suffering
Exactly.
being redemption. Like, the Buddhists talk about suffering. You have to go through something for you to become a whole, like a better human being, raise your consciousness, become a more elevated human being. Every prophet suffered, right?
Every
Do
single
you know
one.
a single prophet that did not suffer?
Every single one suffered.
Exactly. It's part of life. But the question is, what do we do with this suffering?
Exactly.
And, I'll just share something with you because we talked about finding your purpose, because ultimately those are the kinds of people that are coming and listening to these podcasts to learn from other people's struggles. I shared something intimate and vulnerable about in my own memoir about, having multiple miscarriages.
Mhm.
And as a woman, not being able to have a child, you question everything. You had a child and you wondered, why the hell did you have to go through this? I didn't even have a child, right? And when I look at you and I'm like, it was such a blessing to even have a child, or to have two. Now you have a beautiful daughter also. But I never had a child, and I questioned everything. And I got angry with God for a little while. And then
Yeah.
I said, okay, if I'm not supposed to have a child, what is God trying to tell me? Maybe
Mhm.
sparing me that grief or that difficulty that you have with raising children, and freeing me up for something else. And that's when I decided that I would nurture other people if I could use my gift.
Mhm.
And that's why I created the kinds of programs that you attended. Some of those programs, remember? Muslim Leaders of Tomorrow. This was my way of like, oh, there's all these other children out there that I can help. I'm going to nurture the world. And then I also wanted to see whether there was an example within our tradition. And I looked at Prophet's wife Aisha. She never had a child.
Mhm. Yep.
So, like, okay, if God left somebody like her childless, then who am I, right? And so, yeah, these are great lessons that we learn from. I think that
I
I
love that story, Daisy,
yeah,
because
please go ahead.
yeah, I love that because it's such a great anecdote because I have known you, for 20, 25 years, maybe 30 years. And think about that. Think about how if you had had children, how your attention would have been diverted and
Yeah.
how you would have never created the programs that you created that were revolutionary.
Mhm.
How, God needed you to step in, especially after 9/11,
Yeah.
and be a voice and
Mhm.
be an important, take on this incredible role that you took on after 9/11.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, doesn't it, when you're looking back going, okay, I see
Exactly.
I could not have done any of that if I was distracted and sitting at home and raising a child or even having to straddle raising
Yeah.
a child with, doing all of this.
And that's why patience is such an important virtue in Islam, right? We're repeatedly told to be patient when we are suffering or we're going through difficulties. There's always something good that's going to come out of it. There's too much suffering, and that suffering has to result in something positive and good for others, right?
Yeah.
But we have to be patient for the blessing to unveil itself, right? Because you don't see it right away.
That's the issue with going through a struggle is that you don't see in the moment why you're going through the struggle. We think that everyone is enjoying their lives and we're the only one who isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, but each and every one of us has his own deck of cards, right? Because
Absolutely.
we all get it in different ways. So it's
We
not
all
like
get it. But I
so
think
some are challenged by wealth, some are challenged, in their family, some are challenged to their children, all kinds of ways that you could be challenged in life.
absolutely with any sort of, even illness, disease, I mean, loss of, loved ones. It's just the list goes on. But in the US, I don't think that there is that culture of even a place where people can speak safely about suffering
Yeah.
instead of thinking, oh my God, how can I be there for this person? How can I be there for this person that I love? They're automatically thinking about themselves and about how they don't have the right words and how can I have the right reaction?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
we just don't know how to, behave. We don't know how to act in the face of suffering.
Yeah. But we certainly don't even know how to behave when it comes to death because people are so frightened of death. So I'm going to read something from a book that was so profound. I have to read it. Death is a selfish moment. When it arrives, it seizes your attention, monopolizing it, and tunes out everything and everyone around you. Death is coy. It seduces you, whispers its name into your ear, the core of your being. The process doesn't frighten you, it captivates you. You don't shrink away from death, you embrace it. And this is one memory that you had. Can you explain this? Because I think you almost felt like death had overtaken you.
Yes. Um, this is a moment that occurred in the delivery room. Something went through my body and it was turning off all of my, sensations. It was turning off the pain. And for once, I didn't need the pain medications. It was like God had stepped in. Finally, my body was at peace. I felt like I could breathe. And I welcomed it. I welcomed it. I didn't care what it meant. I just welcomed it because there was a sense of peace and a sense of unity in it. And it was this profound moment of just giving in, giving into that.
Yeah, which is what people talk about when they leave their body, they just or even out of body experience is that they feel in unison with everything else and they feel that there's so much love and peace and that beautiful sensation that you feel of being one with everything, like not being disjointed and fragmented. So do you have any fear of death now?
I do not have fear of death. In fact, when every year it's my son's birthday, I actually think of it as bonus years. I've never ever come to a point in my life since this experience where I feel like, oh, these years that I'm here are meant to be mine. They always feel like bonus years.
So I want to ask you, your experience must have had an impact on your family because when people experience this firsthand, they also change. Do you see any change in your parents?
Absolutely. My parents have always been very traditional Muslims and, they eat only halal. They've gone to Hajj. I mean, it's just, but after this experience, absolutely. I mean, it just made it so that they were much more flexible. I was born in India, but I grew up with, mostly in the US. And I made choices. And when I married he's now my ex-husband, but when I married my son's father, he was not Muslim and he was not Indian. He was
Yeah.
from here. And my dad didn't speak to me after that. And he only came out after my brother and my mom called him from the delivery and said, she might not make it. You need to come out and say your last goodbyes.
Mm.
And it hit him so hard. And it just changed the way he saw everything. And he doubted everything. He kept thinking, why would I fight with my own child about someone she's married to? Why did I give up these past few years of being in her life and now I'm going to lose her? My mom believed that God would come in and save me, but my dad really believed that I wouldn't make it.
Mm. Yeah. So while you were going through this recovery, you also write in your book that part of your resurrection had to do with some of the commonalities that you found between Islam and Christianity and other faiths. What was that common ground that you found that helped you?
It's interesting because when I was growing up, I actually ended up going to a Catholic high school. And in my Bible studies classes, I recognized that there was so much commonality between Islam and Catholicism, and Christianity, and with Islam and Judaism. And it's one of the sad things that, we don't hear people often talking about, we say the word Allah, but it's the same, right? It's just the Arabic word for God. And Jews and Christians in the Middle East use the word Allah too when they're referring to God.
Yeah.
There's, I think, with the Old Testament, there are so many prophets that we share, from Adam and Eve to Abraham to Jesus. We hold Mary in the highest of regard. We hold Jesus in the highest of regards. I mean, it's incredible just how much overlap there is. That's why Ishmael, my son's name, I open with that because I talk about how, yeah, in America we say Ishmael, but it's Ismael. And then I talk about how it comes from the Hebrew Yishmael, which means, Yahweh is listening. And so his name really, really shows the commonality between all faiths. And each of the sections in my book, I make it a point to talk about the various ways that the religions are connected, so I don't just talk about Islam specifically. It's I want people to start understanding that there is a lot of commonality, and that the divisions that we're seeing in society right now, these are divisions that are so artificial,
Yeah.
and they're created by politics and politicians, and but they're not, and people have an adverse reaction to religions now. Oh, I don't want to talk about religion, and religion causes so much suffering, and religion causes this and that. It's actually the people who follow those religions who are doing all of that. So
Yeah, it's
religion, when
it's
you
the
look,
it's the corruption of the religion,
yeah,
not the religion itself, because faith can inspire you to do so many great things. So I think that I really want to thank you for this conversation, and because I think that you have been an inspiring example to me, because all the things that you've done for the community, and some people may not know who you are, but they certainly check out your TED Talk, because all of that resulted from the experience that you had and how you kind of dived into your own deeper talent and skills and then put that for for the good of the community. You're an inspiring example of what human determination really is, for somebody who has so much courage to face this overwhelming odds. What you had to do to reconnect all the dots and take the Humpty Dumpty and put the Humpty Dumpty together, right? Literally. And you showed us how this brokenness can truly become sacred, because you're doing God's work, whether you believe it or not. And so I want our listeners to carry this courage that you've heard about today and this resilience, that is being shared to you by Samina. And definitely visit Wise Women with Daisy Khan and join our bridge building community. And I end with the greetings of peace to every wounded warrior out there and all the healers that help others who are listening. Thank you so much, Samina, for being such a gracious guest today.
Thank you, Daisy. It's been an honor.
Thank you for joining me on Wise Women. If something stirred in you today, don't let it stop here. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Reflect on what resonated for you, and definitely plant one seed of change, however small. Remember, you do matter, and your actions have a ripple effect. But none of us can rise alone. To explore more resources and ways to get involved, do visit my website, daisycon.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, because every click is your way of amplifying this message to others. Wisdom isn't just heard, my friends, it's lived. So let's live it. Until next time, stay wise and stay rooted.